So let's go ahead and dive into what happened this week. This week was a relatively chaotic week, as you might imagine. Although we had Monday off, it was still like everything was getting the ball rolling all of a sudden. Last week, where it was just doing all the syllabi and just getting to know each other, doing some fun icebreakers here and there, this was the week that everyone was like, okay, welcome to college, here's your assignment. And it was insane. It started off with my politics class, walking in there, and I remembered from last week she said that the following week, that today, she was going to make sure that everyone moved to the front and that no one was allowed to be in the back. So I go ahead and I sit in the front and I'm all ready for the mass movement to occur, but I don't see the teacher anywhere. So it comes like 5 minutes before class, and I'm like looking at the doors, and the people that are like hanging out by the doors give me like this weird look, like what are you looking for? And then 2 minutes left in class and I'm looking for the teacher again and she's still not there, and 0 minutes left to class and I look. And I think these people just thought I was the weirdest person, or just someone who desperately wanted to leave that classroom, because I was staring at those doors about every 2 minutes. And eventually the time for class started, and then the TA goes ahead, walks up to the front of the class and says, hey guys, the teacher's not going to be here today, so I'm going to teach the class. And all I could think was, I moved to the very front row for absolutely nothing? I'm looking like the biggest jerk that's ever walked this classroom for zero purpose? That's great. I love that. That's wonderful. So we went ahead, he taught the class, and that day went relatively okay. I did get to the honors seminar, which you guys know by now is my favorite class in the world. And when I got there, we were doing these little boards connecting all these various things together. We had to talk about how humanities was different from social studies, was different from art, was different from natural sciences. And I'm over here thinking that humanities is social sciences and art, but that's fine, that's cool. And so we had to make this board, and me, being the great leader that I am, decided to start writing on the board. And I do this, and then I'm like, hey, does anybody else want to write? Are there any artists here? And they just all no, that's fine, you can write. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh boy, you guys did not sign up for this, you don't know. And so all of a sudden, the least artistic person in the world, which is me, is trying desperately to make a board. And I am competing with other people that could actually be considered artists to make this board. And at first I'm like, it's fine, no one's gonna see this, it's just for our own reference and stuff. And then the teacher says, okay, now everyone, we're going to show your board, prop it up, and then explain what everything is. And what I had done was purely categorical. I had split it into 4, wrote the name of each thing on there, and then wrote one word or a few words that we had discussed in each area, and some on the borders. And it was, the first people go and they've got this beautiful map that has all these different connections and these different colors somehow. I think one of them must have brought their own expo markers because we only were given one color. But they show it, and it's this work of art, which of course, when you volunteer to go first, you probably have a work of art. Unless you're me volunteering to go first, in which case you do it purely so that you can look good and not be compared to anyone. So anyway, this group that has this beautiful work of art goes, they explain, and they pretty much hit about 40% of our points. And then the next group goes, and that group covers about 50% more of our points. So now 90% of our points have already been said within 2 groups, which is always the problem I have with group discussions, because you go into them and you have all these ideas, and then everyone else had the exact same ideas, and so you're not special and your opinion is garbage because it's what everyone else thinks and it's not creative or original or anything. So anyway, they get to our group And that last 10%, that is our original idea, was something that I came up with where everything could like explain everything else. And it went in this one way. And so I start, explaining it and going through all of them. And in my head, I'm like, this doesn't make as much sense as it used to. I don't know what's going on. And then I get to the end and I realize that I explained it in the backwards way that I was supposed to explain it. And so then I just got to sit there and be like, oh, well, I guess that proves just how connected these all are. And then just, smiled, let them move on, let the teacher go ahead and rant because she loves to just talk about whatever random stuff you say, and just hope that my group didn't hate me because I did not say anything we discussed. And yeah, all the rest of the boards were either nicely done with like little drawings of everything or just like really insightful. But because my group had decided to have me stay the artist and the drawer and the writer down of ideas, we ended up with this not ideal situation. Tuesday was also when the first mock trial meeting was. And I decided to go to that because I had been an MUN in high school, but I had heard good things about mock trial. And of all things, I've played video games that have you being an attorney and a prosecuting attorney before. And I really wanted to try that out in real life because the video games are still some of my favorite video games that I've ever played. Phoenix Wright, the series, look it up if you have time. But I go into this room and I just see like a huge amount of people. There are seats on either side that are like on levels and facing the front. And they're just completely full on both sides. And I just kind of like walk in and find an empty seat and I just kind of stare at my phone for a little bit. And then I see that the two people that are next to me have an empty seat over by them. And I'm like, well, maybe it's time to try not to be antisocial anymore. So I go ahead and I turn off my phone. Well, I don't turn it off. I put it to sleep. And I walk over and I say, hey, I'm trying not to be antisocial. Can I sit with you? And they're like, oh, yeah, sure. And so I end up talking not only to the two girls that I sat next to, but the two girls that they were talking to previously that were in front of them. And we go ahead and have, this conversation that I knew would come up, which was like, where are you from? And then I inevitably say California, and they inevitably say, why'd you come to Tucson? But they were all good people. They were all really nice. Everyone was super friendly. Two more people ended up coming and sitting by my right side. They were looking for a place to sit, and I volunteered that. And they were also cool. So I managed to get this fun little group of people together. Though it wasn't me that got them together. We just happened to come together, and that was really cool for me. And we went through the meeting, which was pretty dry. It was pretty much all that stuff like, this is what mock trial is, this is why you should join, because we travel. And they always talk about travel, and travel is always my least priority. But, it's cool for people that don't travel. And then they get to the end of the presentation, and they say, hey, on Friday we're having an improv night. And I'm just over here wait, an improv night? Are you serious right now? I love improv. And so at this point, I kind of forget about all the schedule stuff, all the things where it's what days do these people meet? Is this possible? Is this viable? And I'm just screw it. I'm going to improv night. I don't care what else happens. And so we'll save that for Friday. The next day was Wednesday, and Wednesday was pretty standard. The only really thing that I can talk about for Wednesday is that we had the most confusing lab that I've ever done. And it was just, you would read the beginning, and you'd read it, and you'd be like, what does this mean? I don't understand it. And then, the TA goes up and does some stuff on the board, and then he's like, all right, go ahead. And the lab itself is straightforward. It's more the analysis part that I didn't get. And so then he is like, okay, well, don't worry about the last 5 pages of this lab because that's calculus and this is just an algebra course. And so I'm over here like, I spent about 2 hours trying to figure out what the heck all that meant, and I didn't even need to know it. Are you kidding me right now? And then, to kind of add insult to injury, he ends up making this our first lab report that's due. And yes, I did understand the first few pages more than I understood all the other ones, but I still didn't completely understand them because the foundation that it is based on is deeply rooted in the calculus. The calculus that he decided to throw out for this course and for this lab. So now I'm stuck trying to make a lab report for a lab that I only know about half the information for, and the other half I shouldn't talk about because I shouldn't be able to understand it, which is a fun place to be, I can tell you that much. So I've been working on that lab report, and it's been going, well, we'll have to see how it goes. And his office hours, by the way, are on Fridays. And if you want to go to office hour on a Friday, that's great. And I fully support you. But not only do I not want to go to office hours on Fridays, but it directly conflicts with my English class, which makes my life so much more difficult. Anyways, on Thursday, I went ahead and went through my classes, and I decided that I was going to try to eat closer to my comparative government class because essentially most of my classes are on this central part of campus, but my government class is way over there. It's way far from everything else. And over there is also some dorms and some places. So there's one place that's this little mart type thing. So I go ahead and I go there and I look around and everything is over $3. It's you can't get a granola bar without it being $3. And it was absolutely insane, but I had pretty much told myself that I was gonna eat here. So I decided to just go and find this tuna sandwich and just get that. And for all of you that don't like tuna, that's cool, but I do. And so I went ahead and got this tuna sandwich, and then I got out my Powerade that I brought from home, very aware of the fact that it might look like I was stealing even though I wasn't. And I pulled out my government book and I started just going over the information that we were going to cover in class that day. And then someone who looks familiar comes over and says oh, are you in Latin? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, oh, I didn't get your name. So I'm like, oh yeah, I'm Rachel. And then I go ahead and put away the book and figure that maybe it's time for a little more social interaction. Maybe that would be good. So this guy, whose name I don't remember because I am very bad at names, goes ahead and sits down and we talk a little bit about crazy Latin teachers. Apparently he had a Latin teacher that thought that they were a werewolf and carried a wooden sword around with them and had a unit that was about 2 weeks long on werewolves just so that his students could more understand the situation he was in. And to me, this was crazy. And I think it's crazy to pretty much everyone, because what kind of person actually thinks they are a werewolf? And I am aware that this might have been a fib, but then his roommate, I assume, goes ahead and comes over, sits down, and also agrees. So either they talked about this werewolf thing beforehand as just a funny story to tell people and try to befriend people with, or it was real. And I go ahead and learn that they were also from California, which was pretty cool. One of them had lived in the Venice area for a little while, which I have only recently learned exists, and that was insane. So, I had a good time talking to them and, being social for the 30 to 40 minutes, I think, that it lasted. So that was all well and good. It did make me not get through as much reading as I wanted to, but, you kind of make these trade-offs, right? And then Thursday was also the first day of the Dungeons and Dragons Club. And so the Dungeons and Dragons Club has this Discord, this group chat, that I decided to go ahead and join as soon as I could. So I go ahead, put in the access code, and start putting these different memes up, and people start responding, and I feel very welcomed in the community, and it's all great. And we go ahead and talk, and eventually it gets to the time where I actually go to the club. And I see on the chat they're talking about, oh yeah, we got pizza and stuff, and people are asking will there be food, and they're like, yeah. But what they didn't anticipate was that the amount of people that ended up coming to this club wasn't 5 or 10 or 20 or even 50 more people than the years before. It was 80 more people than they had ever had. And all of a sudden, these 80 people all needed dungeon masters and character sheets, and they were hungry. And it just kind of evolved into this weird situation where they had only been expecting so many, and they got so many more. And so me, of course, being the lucky human being that I am, got put in with a group that didn't end up getting a table, didn't end up getting nice chairs, didn't end up getting pizza, didn't end up getting any other female players, which will prove to be interesting. And so we ended up going into the hall, stealing some benches from further down the hall, bringing them around, and then making do without having any table to write on. And, we got through it. We did. We got ahead. We learned a bit more about each other. I learned that everyone there is a super experienced D&D player, except maybe one guy. Everyone had been a dungeon master before. Everyone knew exactly what they were doing. And I felt very unprepared. But they're all nice enough that I think I'll be able to get through it. And so, yeah, we're going to have a very interesting party going forward that I hope to be able to tell stories about here in the future. After Thursday comes the Great Friday, the day where everyone gets to kind of relax and cut loose a little bit. The day that a lot of people don't have classes, but I actually have 3, which is great. And it also is the day that I have my earliest class, which is fun. So I get to wake up the earliest on Fridays, which is great. But that earliest class is Japanese anime, so it's a pretty darn good way to start your day. Just watching so many shows or clips and stuff and discussing them. It's a lot of fun. So that day we went ahead and we watched a bunch of clips, including some from some Japanese game shows. And Japanese game shows are just the best game shows. There is no game show in America that can even attempt to compete with the chaos and craziness and passion of Japanese game shows. They are just incredible. One of them was human bowling. So they got this giant bowling ball, and they had this guy who had tons of energy, yell out a number. And all these people who had been assigned a number by drawing a card were, of course, the pins that he was trying to hit. And so you got to see the ball go ahead and run into them and make them fall over, and then you see them you knocked me over, and all this great stuff. It was very entertaining. The whole class enjoyed it, and it was a great time. We also that day had an incredible physics lecture, because we were talking about electric fields and this one aspect of them, that if you put anything inside of a conductor that's fully surrounded, then there's no electric fields there. So the example he used was an old-fashioned radio, which he pointed out could have been from the Smithsonian at this point. And he went ahead and put it on some metal and then put like this metal wastebasket around it. And the radio went from having some sound playing to nothing at all the second that final piece of the wastebasket went ahead and like fell onto it. And that was pretty cool. That's probably my favorite thing that's happened so far in one of my classes, because I do like science. There is a reason why I'm in science. It's very cool. And then the last thing we did on Friday was go to my English class. And in my English class, we've been discussing for about the past week this one article on discourse written by someone named G, I believe, like G-E-E. And what we discussed that day was basically how much of a garbage article this entire thing was that the entire English division had been holding up for years. We discussed just how inaccurate, just how vague, just how weird, just how just useless this entire article was, and it was a pretty great time, because we went from like attempting to hold this thing at a higher standard than it should have been to just kind of bashing it into the ground. And then after that, I got to go to the improv, the mock trial thing, and that was a ton of fun. It involved a few games that I wouldn't really call improv and weren't the most fun, which were 2 lies and a truth instead of 2 truths and a lie. How creative. And getting to know 10 things that you and your partner share and trying to be the fastest to do so, which is not a very fun game because you end up trying to say the most generic things so that you can win, rather than trying to learn the most interesting things because you're trying to win. But then after that, we had this great game which was called Objection, and I encourage anyone out there who might have a class and need an icebreaker, especially for a public speaking class, to use this game, because the way this game worked is you would go up and start ranting, and then the second that someone heard you say something that they disagreed with, they would slam their fist on the table, yell objection, and then go up and continue essentially about why you were wrong. So say I went up and talked about why birds were the greatest pet, I would probably not even be able to say one sentence before someone would slam their hand on the table and would say, actually, dogs are the greatest pet, and they probably wouldn't even get a sentence in before someone slams the table and says, actually, cats are the best pet, and you get the idea. It would just kind of go into all these different topics, and it was really fun and interesting to try to come up with a rant on the spot about something that you maybe aren't the most passionate about, but it's just, you differ in opinion. And whenever you talked, you would move to the other side of the classroom. So it was really good for getting all those people that don't usually talk or don't usually participate in these activities to actually participate, because it got to the point where they were the only one left, and they had to find something to object to. So that was a really fun game. And then we did Changing the Channel, which is a very stereotypical improv game, and essentially consisted of 4 actors going up, and then the audience could yell freeze at any time, and then tap out one of the people, assume their position, and then go on with the scene. So it was a lot of fun. I decided to be one of the first to volunteer, and I went through like 6 rounds before someone tapped me out. I'm not sure if that's because I didn't have any interesting positions or because I was doing a good job, but I'll take it. It was fun. I had a lot of fun with it. I ended up dead in one scene, and so then I became a zombie in the next, and it was a pretty good time. And yeah, Saturday was just a ton of work, but it was also meeting up with my honors group for that wonderful group project that I love so much. And then it was meeting up with my chemistry study partner for about 30 minutes before we both realized we had more important things to do, which is fine. And today's been pretty slow too. I'm probably going to do a bit more homework, and then the JoJo thing's been moved to today. So that's pretty exciting. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. Oh, and anyone watching this that says, hey, you didn't go to the football game? Listen. It was against Northern Arizona. We knew we would win. We won. That's it. It's not important to me, and I was not about to waste time that I could spend studying or, more importantly, watching shows I actually enjoy instead of watching this game. I will go watch the UCLA game. I will do it. I promise. I will get out of here and go, but that game was not worth my time. Anyways. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening to me rant. I hope that this brings you some joy or at least some entertainment, even though I know deep down that it's probably not that entertaining or enjoyable, but you just do it because you're my friends and you're nice that way. So thank you for being such nice people. And yeah, let me know how your week was in the comments below. If anything cool, interesting, weird, or just normal happened, because that's what I talk about in these videos. I don't really single things out as much as I maybe should. And yeah, I hope that you soar high and enjoy the ride down, and have a great day. Bye.